Yes, I know, it may sound very absolute saying don't make Christmas in your game, and it is known that only Sith deal in absolutes, but I don't mean it in a way as extreme as you're probably thinking. Many people like to incorporate some part of Christmassy celebrations into their D&D games. I've seen many variations of this, from only lightly inspired Winter Solstice celebrations to shameless copy-paste versions of Christmas. But the thing is, like many of our secular traditions, Christmas is burdened with tons of cultural baggage, which, if missing in your fantasy world, may deprive the tradition of context, or worse, making it feel empty, a simple imitation of the real-world version which does more to break immersion than to contribute to the game itself. This doesn't mean you can't have Christmas in your game if you so desire, but like all inspiration you draw from real-world traditions, it needs a few tweaks. Hello and welcome to Arcadian. Although what most Western Christian countries visualize as Christmas is already deeply influenced by pagan rituals and the ever-present shadow of capitalism, Christmas is, at its core, a religious holiday to celebrate the birth of Jesus. It's in the name of the celebration. This should be the first tell sign that this celebration can't be purely ported into your D&D game. If no one named Christ exists in your world, why do you have a celebration in his name? You want an original celebration that makes sense in your world, so obviously a few changes are necessary. The question then becomes, what changes are necessary and how deep do they need to be? And it all depends on exactly why you want a Christmas in your world. Whenever I want to include something inspired in the real world in my fantasy setting, I find it useful to first reflect on the reasons why I want to do that. It helps to guide my design so that I don't write a carbon copy that looks the same but is devoid of any substance, and instead create something that fulfills the same role even if very different from the outside. Depending on your reason for including a midwinter celebration in your setting, you will want to reinforce that core foundation while being free to recontextualize the rest in a way that fits your world. Do you want a celebration that, like Christmas, reinforces a close family spirit? Do you want a yearly celebration that just can be used to signal the transition between the current year and the next? Or do you want a simple excuse for the people in your world to give gifts to each other? From the moment you find your core value, it then becomes a matter of asking yourself why it is valued or encouraged in your version of the midwinter celebration, and world build it out. I talked about the technique of constant interrogation before in this channel, and I will eventually make a specially dedicated video to it. I'll link it here. But the idea is to pile questions on top of questions whose answers will slowly build the lore for you. For example, in my world, I just wanted to provide an opportunity for my players to give gifts to each other in character. In Christian Christmas, the tradition canonically originates from the tale of the three wise men in the New Testament who followed the star to the birthplace of Jesus and gifted him with gold, incense, and myrrh. But obviously, in my world, the Magi of the New Testament don't exist. But I took inspiration in the Nativity story and devised a past event where the gifts given to an important person inspired the beginning of a tradition which propagated throughout history. I asked myself, why do the people in my world give gifts to each other near the end of the year? What was the event, the gift to a very important person that motivated that? So, I took advantage of the Arcane Apogee, a yearly event in my world when a day-long eclipse negates all spellcasting in the last day of the year. In nations protected by strong spellcasters, this would be the best time for enemies to attack, so in the past, a large army tried to invade a great city ruled by a mage king. However, instead of abandoning their king against this much larger army, the people of the city fought bravely and defended the powerless king, who the following day, after recovering his powers, rewarded every single soul in the city with the most wondrous gifts produced by his magic. But here's the funny thing now. After this, your job is done. This festivity is concluded, it is distinct from the original one you based it from, and at the same time serves the same purpose. But precisely because it has minor differences, it naturally generates little divergences which further develop your world building. It is important to steer into them and pile more questions on top of them to organically expand its scope and world build more details that will help make that tradition feel more real and grounded within the rest of your lore. In my example, it was the Mage King who rewarded the non-mages with gifts. Could this mean that only mages would give gifts to non-magical folk? Or would the gift giving later generalize, like what happened with the three wise kings? Perhaps, because the non-mages defended the king, that became known as their present, and it became tradition that non-mages would also return their gifts with something they made without magic, like labor, craftsmanship, or a favor. Suddenly, you have the gift-giving tradition you want, but at the same time, it feels grounded in your world. It feels specific and unique. And the more questions you place on top of the idiosyncrasies of your homebrewed celebration, the more this effect will exponentiate. And you don't need to restrain yourself too much to the inciting incident that gave birth to your celebration. After all, traditions change over time. Even the gift-giving of Christmas changed a lot over the years, and it is thought to be the internalization of previous pagan traditions like the Saturnalia of the ancient Romans. Even in modern Europe, there was a time where the tradition was for young men to go from home to home and demand gifts from the rich people, not for the young children to patiently wait to receive a present from their parents, regardless of class. Also, remember that traditions are often localized, so different regions of your world may adapt certain aspects of the celebration. Look at the real world once more. I'm not American, but you probably are. It is my understanding that the folklore there is that Santa Claus delivers the presents by going down a chimney and placing them within those large Christmas socks, right? But here in Portugal, Santa Claus was a late for introduction. Before, especially in my parents' generation, kids would write their letters to Jesus, and he would be the one delivering the gifts, and he'd place them in a shoe, not a sock. The most curious localization of this tradition I ever learned came to me when I lived in Denmark for a few months. All of you Danes, feel free to correct me in the comments if I get anything wrong, but I was told that the original Christmas gift giver there was the Nisse. Probably butchered the word here. These small gnome-like creatures fabled in the past to be the sole protectors of the homestead. They visit your home from the 1st of December onward, but only if you install a miniature door against the wall from which they will supposedly come out. And every day in December, you can expect the little Nisse to leave a small present for you at their tiny little doorstep. But only if you treat them well, because they are very easily offended and are natural pranksters. The daughter of a friend of mine in Denmark was being particularly snappy at her father one day, so obviously the Nisse got offended and colored her pancakes blue. How would localization affect your world-specific Christmassy celebration? Would it be the same tradition even halfway across the globe? Would it be the same tradition even in the next village? Maybe the origin of the celebration pertains only a single settlement and none other. Maybe it features the king of a specific country, so it means nothing and is not celebrated anywhere else in the world. Which also raises the question, if that's the case, is anything celebrated in other parts of the world at all? To sum it up, if you want to include a Christmas-like celebration in your D&D setting, try to break it down, identify what's important to you, and reconstruct it in a way that achieves your intention without missing any important historical or cultural context of the real world out. Make it truly yours. This advice, in fact, applies to anything you might want to adapt, not just Christmas. Now, of course, if you really want a copy-paste version of the real-world Christmas in D&D, do what you must. It's not like I can stop you. I simply believe that solid world building leads to more immersive games, which lead to more fun. But it's not like I have all the answers and know all the styles of play. You are the most knowledgeable person about your group, so use this information in any way you find it useful. As a final note, I would just like to remind everyone that, even though it is nowadays widely globalized, Christmas is still a very culturally charged tradition, with deep ties to religion. More often than not, I believe it will raise no problems, but be mindful that some players at your table might find it distasteful to have a Christmas-like celebration in the game. Either because they value Christmas so much they don't want to see it distorted in any way, even in a fictional game, or because they simply don't want to be forced to celebrate anything resembling Christmas, again, even in a fictional game. You may have strong opinions about this, but in the end, they don't matter. If anything you want to feature in your game will cause discomfort to your players, that is a good sign you shouldn't include it. As Game Masters, our ultimate role is to provide a good time to our players. If even one of them will feel hurt by our deliberate choices and we have a chance to prevent it, isn't that option much better? Of course, you may say, I want a Christmas-like celebration in my game because whatever, and if my players don't like it, they can always find another table. But should a fictional celebration depicting a real celebration focused on love and family really be the cause for a DM to alienate a player and crush their enjoyment? I think Game Masters must always be mindful not to offend any sensibilities. I hope that you thought this was an interesting debate and that the tools I shared help you in any way. Thank you so much for sticking up with the channel so far. It means a lot to me, all the kind responses to my videos and every single new subscriber. If you want to support me, please spread the word and share these videos with your D&D friends or like the video to help it reach more people. Subscribing to the channel, aside from assuring you get a notification with every new video, doesn't help much with the algorithm, but it does make me very happy, so feel free to do that as well. Thank you for watching. I'm the first Arcadian, and in the end, the greatest snowball isn't a snowball at all. It's fear.